I was plating Sunday stew when Marcus leaned across the kitchen island and whispered, "Don't open your phone at Mom's tonight." The ladle paused mid-air. Beef carrot steam. Ordinary. He never whispered, "Why just don't?" His eyes wouldn't hold mine. I wiped my hands, slid my work phone into a drawer, and tucked my clean backup into my jacket. That tiny decision, as small as a breath, saved me from stepping right into a trap. Because by midnight, I would learn why my husband's rich, smiling family never asked questions. They collected answers, mine included. I'm Lila Tran, 33, brand strategist, oldest daughter of 2 public school teachers from Portland. I grew up counting coupons, polishing thrifted shoes, and pretending the college bursar wasn't terrifying. The responsible one, the dependable friend, the planner. Marcus Ellison is 36, heir to Ellison Freight, a 4th-generation logistics empire that ships everything from books to bulldozers. We met at a retail expo in Vegas. He spilled iced coffee on my pitch deck, stammered an apology, then stood in the neon hallway holding my hairdryer while I blow-dried the pages before my session. I said yes to sushi, then to a long-distance thing, then to a proposal on a ferry soaked in Puget Sound spray. It felt like winning a life I didn't even dare to picture. His parents, Graham and Sylvia, lived on Queen Anne Hill in a house with a view engineered to make you whisper. Their garden was trimmed like a law firm. A bronze sculpture by the door always looked like it was weighing you. His sister Celeste was a year younger than Marcus, but somehow older than everyone. She ran the family foundation, curated photos like assets, and had a way of saying, "Oh, Lila," that could slice through Kevlar. I tried hard. I learned Graham's bourbon order and Sylvia's exact roast chicken timing. I bought a blazer even Sylvia couldn't call cute. I went to charity galas, memorized donors, smiled until my cheeks stung. I told myself it was love to bend, that it was maturity to adjust. It worked sort of until I got promoted to creative director at a Seattle agency and quietly began out-earning my husband. Marcus hugged me proud and teary. The Ellisons clapped too, but softly like something fragile might break if they made noise. The first sign came gift-wrapped. "A housewarming present," Sylvia chirped, waving in a smart security team that installed camera sensors and a charming little tablet that glowed like a nightlight. "So you feel safe while Marcus travels." It was thoughtful. It was also everywhere. The system watched the front door, the garage, the hallway, the office I carved out of the breakfast nook. "State of the art," the tech said, grinning at Marcus while syncing everything to family admin. "Whose family?" I joked. No one laughed. Then there were the coincidences. I flew to Denver for a client workshop. Celeste happened to be in town and slid into my hotel lobby as I checked in. "Board meeting," she sang, taking a selfie with me and our coffee cups. She posted only her smile. 2 weeks later, I was in Spokane for a retail pop-up. Celeste ran into me at the airport gate with the exact same suitcase I have down to the scuff on the wheel. "Twins," she said, tapping mine with hers. My stomach did a slow turn. At home, objects had new positions. Not big things. Pens. A paperclip chain I'd made during a long call. The chain was shorter. My Notion tabs showed sessions from 3 a.m. I wasn't awake at 3 a.m. Our smart thermostat kept switching to away while I was literally in the kitchen making tea. The front door cam occasionally recorded no motion while a delivery photo showed a box on the mat. "Maybe your mixing day's up," Marcus said, gentle but distant, kissing my hair and checking the tablet. He loves tech. He hates conflict. Sunday dinners hardened into ritual 12 chairs linen that made napkins feel guilty, and Sylvia's smile like a chandelier. Conversation was investment-heavy and feeling light. Graham talked shipping lanes and timing the market. Celeste slid barbs like hors d'oeuvres. "Look at you, Lila," she said one night, tilting her head. "Our little power player." I smiled back, trying not to embarrass the brand. She smirked. "You'd have to try a lot harder." Work ramped as it does when you ship a national campaign. Late nights, early calls, Slack pings that stacked like dishes. I kept Marcus looped in. Calendar invites shared, locations on. I planned a date night. I canceled it when a client pushed a brief at 6 p.m. "You're burning out," he said, tracing circles on my wrist. "I'm fine," I said, which meant I was standing on a cliff in heels. Little things escalated. My colleague Luis texted, Do you still want the raw footage from the shoot? And the message vanished while I watched it. I thought I dreamed that until he resent and said, "Weird." My first text bounced. Photos of me at work events popped up in the Ellison group chat angles. I didn't remember anyone taking cropped in a way that made the frame intimate. My laugh with Luis looked like a secret. A shoulder squeeze from my art director Comfort after a rough client call became a still that said something else. "Who's that?" Sylvia asked, lightly stirring her tea. "My coworker," I said. "Do you want to see the full album?" "No need," she said, squeezing my hand. "We trust you." Trust felt like a word under quotation marks. The day the air shifted, Naomi Patel slid into a booth across from me at a tiny faux shop in South Lake Union. Naomi is my friend from college, the one who calls things what they are. Cybersecurity lead at a startup, dry humor, eyes like searchlights. "I need a favor," I said. "You never ask for favors," she said, already reaching for my phone. "What's wrong? I think my house is nosy." She grinned. Then she didn't. She asked for my passcodes and the login to the family admin on our home system. She plugged a tiny device into the faux shop outlet, tethered my phone, then my laptop, then the blinking house tablet. We ate in silence while code scrolled and the broth cooled. When she looked up, her smile had disappeared. "Lila," she said quietly, "don't freak out." "Okay," I lied. "There are 3 monitoring packages on your phone. 2 are parental control level. The 3rd is not. Your laptop has a keylogger. Your house tablet is paired to an admin account that isn't you or Marcus. And the cameras have activity logs that don't match the motion files, meaning someone's pulling feeds, editing triggers, and exporting to an external server. They're building a narrative, and they're good at it." My hands went cold. Could this be corporate random? She shook her head. "This is domestic and targeted." I stared at the steam rising off my bowl. It curled and vanished, like a thought you can't hold. "Tell me what to do." "First, act normal," Naomi said. "Don't change passwords from home. Don't mention me. Keep using your devices. I'm setting you up with a clean phone and a separate iCloud. I'll mirror everything." Also, she slid a tiny recorder across the table. "Carry this. Voice activated. If they're staging moments, we're going to stage timestamps." "I'm scared," I said. My voice sounded like someone else's. "Good," she said softly. "Fear will keep you disciplined." I walked home through a drizzle that made the streetlights look like soft coins. Our block smelled like cedar mulch and ambition. Ben Wu, our neighbor, and my favorite human, in a 5-house radius, waved from his stoop. Ben is an ER nurse with a laugh that resets your day. He held up a container. "Extra dumplings," he called. "From my sister. You'll offend her if you refuse." I took them, grateful for something warm and simple. "Do you ever feel like your house is listening?" I asked, trying to sound light. He nodded toward the rain gutter. "Always," he said, and somehow I believed him. Inside the smart tablet glowed gentle blue. "Welcome home, Lila," the system chimed. The hallway camera winked. Marcus came down the stairs, tie loosened, smile automatic. "How was lunch?" Spicy, I said. "How was the office?" Fine. "Dad wants us early tonight." "It's Mom's birthday. You know how she gets." I did know. Presents wrapped like museum pieces, speeches about legacy. Celeste's lipstick perfect enough to be a blade. I went to our bedroom, closed the door, and logged into the family admin from Naomi's clean device. A name sat there like a fingerprint. C. Ellison admin. It wasn't Marcus. It wasn't me. It was Celeste. My stomach flipped. I clicked activity, rows of timestampies, clips exported. Labels like Front Door Leela W., Luis, and Office 0032 AM. A folder called Evidence. Evidence of what? I took a photo of the screen with the clean phone. Saved it to the clean cloud. Then I put my makeup on with a steady hand. Red lipstick, borrowed armor. Pearls Sylvia gifted me our first married Christmas. Gray dress she'd once called tasteful. When we got into the car, Marcus reached for my hand, then didn't. "You okay?" he asked, eyes on the road. "Completely," I said. At the Ellison house, the door swung open before we could knock. Sylvia stood there in silver silk, smelling like gardenias in control. "Darlings," she cooed, kissing air. "Come in. Family only until 8. The dining room glittered. People I didn't recognize smiled with all their teeth. Graham held a glass like a gavel. Celeste glided toward us, in crimson, a file folder tucked beneath her arm like a secret. She touched Marcus's sleeve. "So glad you came," she said, then turned to me. "Lila? Celeste." Her eyes slid to my purse. Traveling light, always. Dinner began. Stories, toasts, tiny barbs. I counted the seconds between camera red dots, blinking at the corners. My recorder rested inside my clutch live. Naomi's clean phone pressed cool against my ribs. Ben's dumpling sat on our counter, waiting for later proof that the world still contained uncomplicated kindness. Graham rose to speak. "Family," he said. "Loyalty. Legacy." The room hummed. Celeste lifted the folder. Paper hissed as it slid free. And that's where I'll pause. Because the moment her photos hit the linen, the game changed, and not the way they planned. Celeste fanned the photos across the linen like she was dealing a slow, kind funeral. Except the images weren't kind at all. Grainy stills of me leaning over Luis at a hotel bar, my hand near his elbow. His smile tilted into shadow, a hallway shot that caught our shoulders almost touching. A screen grab of text bubbles, cropped to show only my side sentences sliced mid-thought, so they sounded like confession. She didn't speak right away. She let the room breathe in the suggestion. Then her voice soft as napkins. "We wanted to share these privately, before this becomes a board issue." The people I didn't know glanced at each other and vanished like stagehands. "Family only." Graham clasped his hands behind his back, ship captain stern. Sylvia's mouth made a sympathetic bow. Marcus stared at the table, as if words were etched there. My pulse steadied oddly calm. I reached for water. My recorder warmed in my clutch, and kept listening. I studied the photos like they belonged to someone else. The bar shot had a mirrored beer sign reversed letters backward from where Luis and I actually sat last week. The hotel hallway carpet pattern was wrong for the Spokane property. Theirs has navy diamonds, not gray chevrons. The hand near his elbow wore a thin gold band on the right ring finger. I don't wear rings on my right hand. Whoever stitched this wanted it to feel true, not be true. "Is this the best version?" I asked. Celeste's smile flashed. "It's enough." She slid a stapled packet across to me. "We're proposing a temporary separation and a social media detox while we recalibrate the narrative. Standard expectations. You'll also sign this acknowledging the moral turpitude clause in your prenup. In exchange, the foundation won't include your name in any disclosure if the press calls." The clause. The thing I skimmed and trusted because love makes paperwork look like formality. A 2-page addendum Sylvia insisted would protect everyone from gossip. I held the stapled packet by its corner, like it might stain. "Where did these come from?" I said. "A concerned friend," Celeste said. "And a regrettably chatty coworker of yours. People talk when they want to help." Her eyes flicked to Marcus. He swallowed. "Lila," he said quietly, "maybe just take a step back online. We can breathe and sort it out." He was offering a raft he didn't know had holes. I set the papers down and straightened a fork that wasn't crooked. "Marks," I said, still looking at the fork. "Remember the night this bar photo says it happened, the team dinner at Lopez Street? You Ubered over at 9:30 with my charger because my phone died." He blinked. "I did. And the hallway photo," I continued, "that's supposedly Spokane, but this carpet belongs to the chain's Tacoma build. Also, Luis wears a red braided bracelet on his left wrist for his niece. Here it's on the right. His scar from soccer is missing. And the texts," I lifted the screen grab. "These are my punctuation, yes. But the replies are chopped. You know I write in full sentences unless I'm angry. There's no angry here. Just a surgeon's cut." Sylvia exhaled through her nose, tiny and precise. "Even if you can't explain each point, optics don't care about footnotes," she said. "We must think in headlines. Headlines written by whom I asked, because someone is editing my life and filing it like exhibits." Celeste tilted her head. "If you don't want to sign tonight, don't. We're not monsters. Take a day. But for your sake, keep your calendar clear of late nights and closed doors. Someone always sees." The kindness slid over concrete. I slipped the packet into my purse like I might actually read it later. My clean phone vibrated once against my ribs, Naomi's agreed-upon nudge. I texted the single word we picked inside a draft email that would never send to go. I folded my hands. I appreciate your concern, I said, tasting each word. I'll review and loop in counsel. Graham's eyes narrowed, a man measuring hours against risk. There's one more item, he said, and nodded toward the doorway. A young guy stepped in carrying a laptop and a nervous smile. I'd seen him at events filming reels. Theo Park, 24, the Foundation's digital media associate. He had the look of someone who still believed you could fix a mess by labeling files better. He set the laptop at the buffet and connected to the TV. A folder tree appeared, Foundation Gala Harbor Renovation Media Plan Q2. Then a folder that didn't belong in that lineup Lila narrative. Theo flinched, mouse shaking. Sorry, he blurted, wrong display. The room tightened around him. Celeste's tone stayed gentle. Theo! He swallowed, looked at me, looked at her. Do you want me to turn it off? She said, without turning her head. He obeyed. My recorder didn't blink, but I could feel the moment fix itself in sound. I smiled at Theo like he had just told me where the door was. The revealer had a name now. I think we're finished for tonight, I said, rising. Happy birthday, Sylvia. Her lashes didn't move. Thank you for the thoughtfulness, she said, meaning the opposite. Marcus followed me to the foyer. His hand hovered near my shoulder, then fell. I didn't know about a folder, he whispered. I believe you, I whispered back, and I did, because whatever else he was not slick. Outside, the air smelled like wet stone. As soon as we reached the car, Naomi called my clean phone on signal. I answered without hello. You were right, she said. Admin traces lead to a private Synology box on their network, alias CE. I've scraped thumbnails and logs. They've been curating for 2 months. There's a tagging system, dates, locations, your contacts. My mouth went dry. Can you copy it? Already cloning. But you need physical proof too, in case they claim deepfake. Their box has a USB backup routine. Nightly, if you can get into their office or media room, pull the attached drive. It will show creation dates and sync history. The cloud mirror can't fudge. I pictured the Ellison Library, the credenza with glass doors, the locked office behind the abstract painting. How long do I have it? Their backup kicks at 2 a.m., Naomi said. Pull before then and we catch their current state. After they might purge. She paused. Be careful. I hung up, heart steady again. Fear was a metronome now. Marcus drove in silence. Streetlights slid across his face like thoughts he didn't want. Do you think I cheated? I asked. He gripped the wheel. I think you're under attack, he said, voice low, and I think I should have noticed sooner. It wasn't an apology, but it opened a window. At home, the smart tablet greeted us with its sweet voice. I walked past it, set my purse on the counter, and opened Ben's dumplings. I didn't know if I would eat them, but I needed the smell of something that wasn't curated. Marcus leaned on the island. What do you need from me? He asked. A key, I said, and 10 minutes without an alarm. He nodded, surprised by his own quick agreement. Dad keeps a ring in the garage safe, for emergencies. I can get the office key. He moved fast. I changed shoes, switched my blazer for a dark sweater, tied my hair. The recorder sat in my bra like a heartbeat. When he returned, he handed me a dull brass key and a code scribbled on a sticky note. I'll tell them you forgot your scarf, he said. You take my car. Park on the side street. The garden door sticks. Lift when you push. For a second, I saw the Marcus I said yes to on that ferry, hair-wet eyes lit. He kissed my forehead, a gesture from a time before camera folders. If you get caught, he said, say I sent you. I won't get caught, I said, and hoped I wasn't lying. The Ellison house at night felt like a gallery closed for cleaning. Lights low, air filtered into something expensive. Gardenias in control. I slipped through the side gate, lifted the sticky door, and moved like I was supposed to be there. The office sat behind that painting, because of course it did. The key turned with a small sigh. Inside the Synology unit hummed in a cabinet, a black box with blinking blue eyes. A portable drive dangled from its belly like a tail. I checked the desk clock. 1:12 a.m. I took out my phone, snapped photos of serial numbers, then pulled the drive with a clean cloth. The lights on the unit flickered angrily and returned to still. I slid the drive into my bag and took one more picture of the cabinet intact, but not whole in case they accused me of damage. As I turned to go, footsteps creaked in the hallway. Not Celeste's click. not Graham's measured thud. It was a quick, soft patter, a child's run. Daisy, their 7-year-old niece, skidded into the doorway in unicorn pajamas hair, a flying question. She froze when she saw me, eyes wide. "Aunt Lila," she whispered. "Why are you in the secret room?" Innocence had found me at the worst time. I crouched to her height. "I'm returning something I borrowed," I said, which wasn't wrong. "Do you want to walk me to the kitchen so I don't get lost?" She nodded solemnly and offered her hand like we were crossing a busy street. We tiptoed together past the library, past the portrait that always made me feel like a stranger. In the kitchen, she let go and reached for the fridge. "I'm allowed to have milk if I can't sleep," she said. "Me too," I said, pouring a splash and drinking like a person who belonged. A shape filled the doorway. Sylvia robe-tied expression carved mosquite from the same wood as the banister. She took in the scene, the milk, the child, my sweater, my calm, and chose a smile. "Couldn't sleep?" she asked Daisy. "Nightmares," Daisy said. "Aunt Lila helped." Sylvia's eyes met mine over the rim of her glass, a duel conducted with manners. "Thank you, dear," she said. "We're lucky to have you." I set the cup down and smiled like nothing in the world was burning. "Always," I said. Daisy yawned, and Sylvia swept her away with a hand on her shoulder. I walked to the garden door at a normal pace, lifted, and stepped into the night, carrying proof that the story they wrote about me had a hard drive and a heartbeat. I slid into Marcus's car and texted Naomi one word: Gotit. The return text flashed back with an address and a plan. The next move would require a place the Ellisons didn't control. We had one chance to make the truth heavier than their version, and before dawn we would find out who else had been watching. Naomi's pin dropped me at a low-slung building behind a bakery that smelled like sugar and sawdust. The kind of place where startups pretend not to be worried. Inside, her lab fans hummed cables, laced the tables, and a whiteboard carried equations like graffiti you could trust. She met me at the door, eyes awake, hair in a knot that said no sleep, and slid the drive into a right blocker as gently as if it were a vein. The clone process bloomed on her screen bars, marching timestamps spilling into columns. "Look," she said, tapping at entries. The system pushes every clip into a staging folder. Then someone rates it by usefulness, then moves it to narrative with tags, time, location, bait. There's even a heat map of your responses at different hours. They're not just collecting, they're training themselves on you. Metadata lined up like obedient soldiers. Creation dates, device IDs. A consistent signature from the Ellison home cameras and from Celeste's laptop, labeled in the logs as CEMBA. Buried deeper sat a series of edited stills with Photoshop history. Intact brushstrokes, recorded like fingerprints. One file contained the hallway frame with the carpet swapped and a layer named Bracelet Flip He. It felt absurd that deceit could have layer names. Naomi exported a report with hashes and checksums, and I loved that math could hold me up when people didn't. While we waited for the last chunk to verify, my clean phone buzzed once. "Ben, hey, not to be weird, but my door cam caught someone at 3:12 a.m. Trying your handle. Looked like Celeste, could be wrong. Want the clip?" I swallowed a laugh because the universe occasionally plays fair. "Yes, please." I wrote and delete from the app after you email keep the SD. Seconds later, his file arrived. Night vision green timestamp sharp. The silhouette tilting toward our door and glancing at the lens with that particular Ellison chill. Naomi whistled low. "That's gift-wrapped corroboration," she said, parking it next to the drive logs. She spun her chair toward me, voice careful. "We need a trap they can't describe away. We'll plant a canary, a document that phones home when opened. Unique token, immutable log. If the ping comes from their network, we tie the bow." She drafted a simple doc titled Apology Copy Draft for Marcus only, 3 bland paragraphs about stepping back and honoring family, plus a single invisible link to a harmless domain with a tracking token. She generated a matching PDF for plausible deniability and embedded the same beacon. "You'll text Marcus from your normal phone," she said. "Tell him you're willing to work with the family and that he can show Celeste this draft to calm things. He will forward it to the admin thread. Once they open it on their end, we get time, IP, and device." That gives us chain of custody with the drive Ben's clip and these edit histories. I called Marcus from the kitchen table in Naomi's lab. He answered on the first ring. His voice was thick with that mix of relief and dread you hear in hospitals. I told him the line we planned, nothing extra. He didn't ask for more. I'll send it to Celeste right now, he said, trying not to sound like he was choosing a seed. 5 minutes later, Naomi's console blinked alive. Hit recorded token 8F3B, opened by C. Ellison admin, on CE MBA internal IP resolved to their office router. Geolocation within 5 meters of their library. A second hit followed from a mobile device tagged CE iPhone. Naomi printed the log and stapled the page like she loved gravity. They just stepped into your footprint, she said. On the clone, a file I hadn't seen before surfaced near the top of the tree statement, Lila Final. DocX. Naomi opened it, and we read a polished paragraph on regrettable lapses and rebuilding trust already formatted with quotes from friends close to the family, and a note to coordinate with 2 gossip reporters. Dates were penciled for Monday, which was 2 days away. The audacity steadied me. I wasn't imagining the speed. They had a calendar for my ruin. We need testimony. Naomi said not just machines. Theo's nervous face at the dinner flashed back. I still felt his wince in my throat. He'll talk if he can do it in the light, I said, but not at their office. Naomi nodded and texted a number from her contact list with a single line, coffee at Kestrel 1 hour. No phones near the table. She looked at me. Before he arrives, call a lawyer. It's time to stop playing defense. She connected me to Arman Singh, a litigator who sounded like he had made peace with people lying to his face for a living. I gave him the outline, while Naomi sent encrypted bundles of the evidence to 2 vaults. Arman listened and then cut the air cleanly. You'll preserve and notify, he said, custody letter to the family before they lose anything. Also a cease and desist on defamation and interference. Do not threaten the press. We will control venue. And Lila, do not confront alone. You talk where I can record. The word we landed like a chair I could sit in. At Kestrel, a quiet cafe with plants and the good hum, Theo arrived early and sat in the corner like a kid trying to look like furniture. He saw me and almost stood to apologize for breathing. I kept it simple. You showed me a map by mistake, I said. I know you know. He stared at the foam in his cup and then spoke in a rush. You hear right before someone gets off a bus at the wrong stop. She said it was narrative hygiene, he said, that if the family didn't tidy the story, the market would do it cruelly. She asked me to crop to caption to match timestamps so things felt obvious. She said it wasn't lying, it was context. I told myself I was doing PR, not harm. But last week, Daisy cried because her mom and Celeste were fighting about who would keep her on weekends if there was a scandal. I don't want to be that person. I asked him if he'd recorded any instructions. Guilt makes people document. He nodded. I keep voice memos to remember deliverables. I forgot to delete one after a meeting. It has her saying the phrase, moral turpitude trigger, and will force the separation before Q4. Naomi had predicted his habit. He airdropped the file to the clean phone, eyes wet. I thanked him and offered him counsel through Arman. He flinched at the idea and then nodded once like a swimmer deciding to finally go under. Outside, the morning went high and bright. The bakery next door tossed sugar into the air like confetti. My normal phone rang. Sylvia's name bloomed on the screen. I let it go to voicemail. She followed with a text that read, "When you're calm, come by for a chat. We can still keep this within the family." The timing was a tell. The canary had stung. Armand drafted the preservation notice on his end, while Naomi built a clean share with read-only access for him and law enforcement if needed. Marcus texted, "Celeste wants you at noon. Just us 4, says it's gentler." I can stall. I sent him a single line. Noonworks council joining. 3 dots pulsed, then disappeared. He replied, "I'll be there." Ben, the unlikely anchor of my block, wrote me again. "I've got another clip from last week. Someone rifled your mailbox at 2:40 a.m. Same coat. If you need me to say what I saw, I will. Also, your dumplings will die if you ignore them." His ordinary kindness found the exact crack in my fear. I thanked him and asked him to keep the SD cards locked. Naomi slid a USB-C case across the table. Inside lay the cloned drive we would not carry into any room we didn't control. You bring paper summaries, and the lawyer, she said I keep the guts. If they play dumb, you smile and let Armin talk. If they swing, you don't. I breathed through the plan and felt my spine settle. We had logs, edits, a canary hit a neighbor's camera, and a junior staffer ready to say the quiet part into a recorder. The Ellisons had polish rooms with art and a calendar set to Monday. Today was Saturday, and by noon, we would flip their schedule into evidence. I straightened my sweater, texted Marcus one more time, and pocketed the recorder. Outside, the sky was a blunt Seattle blue, the kind that tells you storms are patient. I wasn't. I headed toward Queen Anne to sit at a table I used to fear, and ask people who collected answers to explain why they thought they owned mine. Armin and I arrived at noon to a room staged like a truce. Sunlight filtered through sheer curtains. A tea service, no one touched, place cards without names. Celeste at the head, in a cream suit that read harmless and did not mean it. Graham stood behind her chair, hands on the backrest, the way men claim a field. Sylvia arranged napkins with priestly care. Marcus sat at my side, shoulders squared, jaw set, not performing neutral anymore. Celeste opened with a tone she saves for donors, soft, deliberate, like she's walking a bird out of a house. We want to level set in private, keep this from spilling where it hurts the brand, she said. Armin placed a folder on the table and let the room feel the weight of paper. Mrs. Ellison. Mr. Ellison, Ms. Ellison, he said evenly, this is a litigation hold notice. Effective now, preserve all devices, cloud accounts backups, and paper files related to Lila Tran or any narrative you have assembled. Spoliation will be actionable. This letter also demands you cease further defamation and interference with her employment. We will coordinate collection with your counsel. Do not delete, do not move, do not rename. Graham inhaled as if the air cost money. Celeste smiled wider. That sounds dramatic, she said. We're talking about family guardrails, not litigation. Armin didn't blink. Guardrails don't require forged exhibits, covert monitoring, or pre-written statements about moral turpitude, he said, sliding out the first summary timestamps from their admin, the canary log with device and IP. A still from Ben's door cam with the shape of a woman in a coat, pausing at my handle. The Photoshop layer list with bracelet flip circled. No device. No original drive on the table, hing. Only verified prints and hashes. You could have edited those, Graham said with a dry chuckle that didn't reach his eyes. Armin nodded once. Which is why we have chain of custody and redundant vaults. Which is also why your NAS backup, expected to run at 2 a.m, did not complete. The attached portable drive was temporarily secured for imaging to prevent spoliation and will be returned to your counsel by 5 p.m. Schmunds. Its sync history will match these logs. If it does not, we will note the delta and amend the complaint accordingly. Sylvia's hand tightened on the teapot. She looked at Marcus, then at me, the smile narrowing into a blade hidden in silk. You're turning a misunderstanding into a spectacle, she said. I kept my voice low. A misunderstanding doesn't require a folder named after me, I said, or a junior employee cutting frames until a hug looks like an affair. This is design. Celeste glanced at Marcus as if he were hers to prompt. He didn't move. She returned to me. You've been under strain and made a few poor choices. She said we tried to protect you from yourself. That's love under pressure. I slid the printout of their doc statement/Lila final across to her and kept my fingers on the corner. This says I regret lapses and will step back from public work. It includes quotes from friends close to the family and calls scheduled for Monday. If this is love, it's the kind that carries scissors, I said. She skimmed it like she'd never seen it. Then she looked at Armin. You must know the press eats uncertainty. We spared her worse, she said. Armin placed a second sheet down the canary hit log stamped with their internal IP and device label. You opened a file labeled Apology meant for Marcus on CE MBA and CE iPhone at 10:41 and 10:43. We will subpoena the router to confirm. You do not spare her. You script her, he said. The room shifted a degree cooler. Graham leaned in voice, now the gravel of a loading dock. What would it take to put this away? Armin didn't answer. That question belonged to me. I turned my chair toward Marcus first because that choice mattered. "Do you believe I cheated?" I asked. He held my eyes. "No," he said, and the word didn't wobble. I saw the admin names after dinner. I saw CE on the panel. I didn't connect the pattern until last night. And that is on me. I'm done letting them speak as me. He placed his phone on the table screen, unlocked the family admin, opened the alias, C. Ellison admin listed beneath owner. He had screen recorded his navigation there while standing in our kitchen, and he hit play now. The validator arrived without fanfare. Celeste's lashes flickered. "Marcus, you're confused," she said, turning on that sibling register that served her a lifetime warm with history and heavy with training. He didn't look away. "I'm not," he answered, and the air thinned around the words. Sylvia shifted to the language of peace offers the sweet poison. "Lila, we can reframe this. We can say a staffer overstepped. We can make it gratitude and growth. You keep your job, we keep our calm. No lawyers, no headlines. Think of Daisy," she said, dropping the child between us like a shield. I thought of Daisy in unicorn pajamas, whispering secret room, and felt the steel in me settle. "I'm thinking of her," I said, "which is why I won't teach her that silence is the price of belonging." Celeste tried a new angle, lower closer. A whisper meant to divide. "Even if everything you're waving is true, going public scorches Marcus too. Boards hate noise. Your career depends on budgets run by people who play golf with my father," she said. "I'm counting on their wives," I said, and watched the surprise cut through her restraint, and on witnesses. One of your own captured you saying, "Moral turpitude trigger," and forced the separation before Q4. He'll give that to counsel on record. He's not your scapegoat. He's a human being who doesn't want to be a weapon. Graham's jaw moved like he was chewing through rope. "Who?" he barked. Armin raised a hand. "Ask that in discovery," he said. The power in the room rebalanced on a hinge I could hear. Celeste folded her arms slowly, as if she could buy time with grace. "You think you win because you have a tech friend and a jittery intern," she said. "I think I win because I have the truth and the clock. I said your rollout was Monday. Mine is today if you continue. Or we do this the quiet way, written apology to me and to Marcus, acknowledging the monitoring and edits removal of all fabricated assets, internal notice to your staff, correcting the record, and a signed statement to my agency that you will not contact clients, donors, or press about my conduct without my written consent. You will also pay for forensic cleanup of my devices. After that, we go to ground for a while and let the sky be blue again, without captions. The blue out the window was pure and indifferent. Sylvia assessed the math always faster than anyone in the room. Reputation against liability, control against exposure. She put her hand lightly over Celeste's fingers, a move that looked maternal and read restraining. "Graham," she said softly, "we should let counsel read their packet." Graham glared at Armin like he had brought rain to a parade, and finally gave a tight nod. Celeste exhaled hard through her nose and turned to Marcus as if he were a lever she might still pull. "If she loves you, she won't do this to the business," she said. He didn't flinch. "If you loved me, you wouldn't do this to my wife," he said. The room paused as if a glass had fallen and not yet shattered. I felt the decision land inside me clean and final. "I'm moving out today," I said to the three of them without anger or theater, "until you comply in writing or choose litigation. I will not attend dinners. I will not accept calls without my counsel on the line, and I will not read anything labeled narrative. Daisy can come to our place for pancakes whenever her mother says yes. She doesn't need a committee for syrup." Sylvia's mouth twitched at the word pancakes, at the uncontrollable ordinariness of it. She stood, smoothing her skirt. "We'll have our lawyer contact yours by end of day," she said, which was not a surrender, but it was not a threat. Armin gathered the papers without haste. We left through the side door the gardeners use past hydrangeas so perfect they looked artificial. The sky still, a calm, unbothered blue. On the steps, Marcus stopped, breath fogging in the mild air, as if his body hadn't caught up. "I'm coming with you," he said. I searched his face for the part of him still hoping to fix it with a brunch and a text. It wasn't there. "Pack light," I said. We drove to our street, and Ben waved from his porch like a flag of normal. I packed a suitcase with clothes and the things I owned that told the truth. Cracked mug, thrifted leather folder, the ferry photo in a cheap frame. Marcus grabbed his duffel and the marriage license because symbols deserve fresh air. Naomi texted courier en route to deliver original drive to their council. Clone in deep freeze. Watch your flanks. Armin sent a calendar invite labeled Ellison Hold / Next Steps, Monday 9 a.m. My agency's HR pinged to say they'd received a vague inquiry about my conduct earlier in the week and had already flagged it as third-party noise. I had emailed them a memo an hour ago, attaching the preservation letter. They replied with one line, "We've got you." I locked the door, set the smart system to guest mode with new credentials Naomi had provisioned, and left a note for Daisy tucked into the chalk box on our porch pancakes. Anytime. Bring sprinkles. In the car, Marcus took my hand without looking at me and squeezed once, not for show for ground. We had moved the fight into a place with rules. The story they'd built around me had cracked. The next part would be heavier, colder, done in rooms with glass walls and pens that leak responsibility. But for the first time since the ladle stopped over stew, I could inhale. The truth had spine and a plan. And across town, a clock that wasn't mine had started to count in my favor. Sunday began in a friend's sublet that smelled like lemons and new paint. Marcus made coffee in a dented kettle and handed me a mug like a promise. My clean phone blinked with Armand's email. At 8 sharp, formal and surgical, their counsel acknowledged receipt of the portable drive, and the hold notice denied wrongdoing in a paragraph that said nothing and proposed mutual non-disparagement with no admission language. I read it twice and felt the old urge to compromise, knock once, and leave. Naomi texted a minute later with a screenshot of a monitoring alert tied to our Canary domain. Another open from CEMBA at 7:13 a.m., as if curiosity were a compulsion. They can't help themselves, she wrote. We ate toast over the sink and spoke in short lines because too many words can tip the day. I showered, dressed in jeans and a navy sweater that said ordinary, and braced for the next move. It didn't wait. At 9:17, a gossip site pushed a headline that tried to turn my life into a punchline. Grainy pictures, the same doctored frames from the folder, with a caption about late-night lapses and a claim that sources close to the family feared for the brand. They used the hallway shot with the wrong carpet. They used the bar still with the reversed beer sign. They blurred Luis's face and left my smile sharp. The comments filled like a floodplain. For a second, my chest forgot to rise. Then, the work part of my brain, trained to triage fires, stood up and flicked on lights. Armand's call came in cool and steady. We file a takedown and preserve the page with hashes, he said. You say nothing inflammatory. One neutral sentence on your channel, then silence. We will speak for you in demand letters. We will also move for a protective order first thing Monday. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. I crafted a single line and posted it to my work account. We are addressing the circulation of falsified materials obtained through unauthorized surveillance. Counsel has instructed me not to comment further. Thank you for respecting privacy while we follow the process. The sentence was clean bones with no hooks to tug. Still support poured in under it, coworkers, former clients. A cousin I hadn't spoken to since graduation. Even our bakery neighbor who wrote donuts on me when you're ready. Naomi had already packaged a forensic bundle for the site's legal. Within an hour, their editor added a cautious update that smelled like liability and left the headline intact. That was fine. My aim was the courthouse, not their homepage. At 10:30, the Ellison Council sent a second note softer, asking for a meeting to avoid escalation. Armin replied with a list-written admission of monitoring destruction of fabrications under supervision. Apology to my employer and payment for remediation. He gave them a 2-hour window and copied their general counsel instead of the foundation inbox. While emails traveled, Marcus opened his laptop and drafted his own letter of resignation from the foundation board. He didn't ask me to weigh in. He just wrote the truth and hit send. Within minutes, his father called. Marcus stared at the screen, let it go to voicemail, and then typed a follow-up to the board, stating he would cooperate with any review of internal practices. His choice landed like a clean blade. Pressure arrived from a new angle at noon when a patrol car idled at the curb and a detective knocked with the polite firmness of someone used to bad days. I felt the floor tilt until he introduced himself and said, "Mr. Ellison reported a removed backup drive. We're just documenting. Armin had predicted the gambit and sent me a script." I kept my voice even, handed the detective the courier receipt, the chain of custody letter, and a copy of the hold notice. Naomi had also emailed the precinct the imaging report. The detective read scribbled and sighed like a parent whose kids were smarter than this fight. "Look civil," he said, left his card, and reminded us to call if anyone tried to enter without consent. The moment he pulled away, my phone lit with a client name I loved and feared losing. I took the call in the hall. She didn't ask me to explain. She said, "We've seen this movie. Send your counsel's note for our files. Your work stands. Let me know how to support you." I thanked her and wiped my face with the side of my hand like a kid caught outside in the rain. Ben texted from his porch with a photo of a box of oranges and wrote, "Vitamin C and stubbornness. Leave the rest to the lawyers." The day kept stacking. At 1:40, Naomi pinged that a new device labeled G. Ellison iPad had opened for the Canary link from an IP range registered to the family office downtown. She added a smile that wasn't happy so much as satisfied. The pattern was now a net. At 2 messages began to leak out of private group chats that had once adored Celeste. A donor she'd groomed forwarded Marcus a long, careful text in which Celeste described me as unstable and obsessed with optics. The donor added, "For what it's worth, this felt off when she wrote it." Armin folded it into the growing record. At 3, Theo called from a payphone because he had watched movies and learned caution. He said their counsel had interviewed him for an hour and asked him to sign a memory. He hadn't. He walked straight to Armin's office, handed over the voice memo, and left with a lawyer's business card and a face that looked like sleep might be possible again. The unexpected obstacle hit late afternoon when my agency's PR lead called to warn me that a rival shop had received an anonymous packet implying they should reconsider hiring me in the future. The packet contained the same cut frames and a photocopy of the moral clause addendum with a sticky note that read, "She knew." We traced the postage to a private mailbox near the Ellison office. Pattern confirmed. Armin added interference to the list. I put the kettle on and watched the water go still while heat climbed. Fear had switched from fog to fuel. We moved. Armin filed an emergency motion for a temporary restraining order on further dissemination and spoliation. Naomi prepped declarations in clean prose that even a tired judge could feel in their bones. Marcus recorded a statement to the board about internal controls, his voice steady and plain. I typed a letter to Daisy's mother that said only what mattered if Daisy asked about me, tell her pancakes are still safe. The sun sank. Emails slowed. The quiet felt sharp. Then Sylvia called, and for the first time since the stew night, didn't lead with a posture. "I read your terms," she said. "No frosting. I can agree to remediation and a private apology. Public admission is different. It ends careers. There must be a version where we say less and do more." I held the silence long enough to hear my own pulse and answered in a tone that fit a lock. "The public part is narrow." I said no names, no blame. A statement that third-party materials were inaccurate, that you regret reliance on them, that you support our marriage without reservation. That's it. The rest is private and documented. "You know this is the better ledger," she exhaled. I could feel her doing math. "Give me until morning," she said. "You have until 9, I said. She didn't argue. I hung up and looked at Marcus. He nodded, not hopeful, just ready. We ate noodles from a paper box sitting on the floor of the sublet, like students again, and planned the morning like a heist. If they chose war, we would serve filings at 10 and hold our own timeline. If they chose sense, we would meet at a neutral office with counsel and a notary and watch them sign. I didn't sleep much. I counted the cracks in the ceiling and thought about my parents' kitchen thrifted mugs and coupon stacks and no cameras in the hall. Dawn came gray and generous. At 8:59, Naomi texted a single-word ping. CEMBA had opened a second Canary file titled Draft Apology V2 from the same network. A minute later, my phone rang. It was their counsel with a calm new tone. He offered an agenda that sounded like he had finally read the room admission of monitoring supervised deletion of edited assets. A letter to my agency, and a joint public line limited to accuracy of materials. Armin slid me a thumbs up. At 10, we entered a conference room with glass walls tall enough to make anyone honest. The notary checked IDs, pens appeared. Celeste walked in last with a face that could have been carved. She didn't look at me. Sylvia did. Her gaze had lost its slice and found a steadiness I had not seen since our engagement. Graham signed with force and left before the ink dried. Celeste signed late and pressed too hard the way you will a page you mean to bruise. When the last page turned, Armin read the line we had asked for into the record. Their counsel agreed. We set the schedule for a forensic sweep of my devices and a third-party audit of their security. The room breathed. Afterward, in the hallway, Celeste finally spoke low and private. "You'll never be one of us," she said, like she was handing me a map. I smiled without heat. "Good," I said. "I don't need a committee to define me." Outside, the air smelled like rain about to start and not yet brave enough. Marcus slid his hand into mine, and we walked to the elevator without looking back. The damage would still ripple. People would still murmur. But the engine they built to grind me had been shut down, documented, and boxed. Now came the work of repair. The new map of us without their edits. The quiet hours where truth grows its legs. By night, I wrote 3 sentences to my audience and meant every word. I'm safe. I'm represented, and I will not be curated. Send recipes, send jokes, send sunlight. The comments filled with pancakes and puns and pictures of blue sky. I closed the app and let the sound of the kettle tell me what mattered: a small boil in a clean kitchen and a morning that belonged to no one but us. 3 months later, the story no longer ran my day. It sat on a shelf labeled "Handled, not forgotten, but quiet." The audit wrapped, the third-party firm traced every login and tagged each edit the report used, Celeste's phrase "narrative hygiene" as a heading in black ink that could not blush. The foundation accepted findings, paid for cleanup, and issued the narrow line we negotiated. No names, no flourish. Just that materials had been inaccurate and that they regretted reliance. My agency pinned the letter to a private memo and moved on. My devices were rebuilt from clean images. Naomi trained my team on privacy basics. She turned my case into a workshop that sold out in a day. Her slides used fake names and real lessons. Theo joined her startup and learned to sleep again. He texts me thumbnails of his cat and the window where sunlight settles at 4. The Ellisons made changes that looked like contrition and felt like control being pried loose. Graham stepped back from the family office for health reasons. Sylvia eased into the foundation's galas with more listening and less spin. Celeste took a leave and then reappeared in a smaller role, sharper suit, quieter captions. We no longer attended Sunday dinners. We made our own noodles and dumplings and basic roast chicken, the kind that smells like a kitchen trying to be a home. Ben taught Marcus the right way to seal a cast iron pan and brought oranges when the rain dragged his porch. Laugh still resets my day. Daisy came over 3 Saturdays in a row, unicorn pajamas under her coat. Because she insisted on immediate pancakes, she brought sprinkles and a stuffed rabbit, and the kind of questions that remind you truth needs simple words. We cooked slow, we watched cartoons. We went to the park where the swings squeak and no one weighs you at the door. I kept my job and then took on a project bigger than anything I thought I could: lead a rebrand for a hospital network, the one where I learned to hear fear in phone voices. I wrote the tagline at midnight with the fairy photo propped beside my laptop. Waves blurred hair wild. A reminder that I once said yes on a deck with no cameras aimed at us. The pitch landed, the contract signed. My team cheered in a group chat full of bad gifts and relief. Marcus and I started therapy. Not the kind where you trade blame like receipts. The kind where you learn boundaries that hold even under pressure. He practiced sentences that didn't bend toward his family's gravity. I practiced trusting my own early alarms. He apologized without flowers, and backed that apology with actions. I could touch new locks, new system, new reflexes. He left the board and found a role at a smaller logistics firm where his name wasn't the logo. He bikes to work and comes home less defended. We are both learning that love without surveillance is quieter and wider. It does not require a performance. It asks for presence and paperwork done with eyes open. One afternoon, Sylvia asked for coffee at a neutral place by the library. I went because endings deserve air. She came alone, hair-pinned voice flat. She said she had spent weeks thinking about the cost of being right. She said she grew up in a house where control looked like care. She said she thought she was protecting a legacy and nearly burned her son inside it. She did not expect forgiveness and did not ask. I told her that Daisy would always have pancakes and that the rest would take time, measured in small, consistent choices. She nodded like a woman who finally saw the span of her own reach. We parted with no hug and no performance but less steel between us. On a sunny Sunday, Marcus and I took the ferry again, not to reenact a test. We stood at the railing with wind in our faces. He held out the cheap frame from our shelf and smiled. "We still look like those two," he said, just with better passwords. I laughed because humor survived. And because he wasn't wrong, the sky was a color that makes you think the world might cooperate. If you ask nicely, the water hit the hull, a steady, honest sound. Back home, I found a cardboard box on the porch with a note in Theo's sharp handwriting inside. Sat a bronze paperweight shaped like a small scale, not the heavy sculpture at the Ellisons' door that always judged this one. Fit my palm, someone had etched a line under it. Weight belongs to truth. I set it on my desk beside the dumpling container. I kept as a joke and a reminder. I opened my laptop and wrote a guide for young creatives titled, "How to Keep Your Work Yours 10 Pages Short. Lined Steps That Fit Busy Lives." I posted it for free and sent it to my old college list. Replies piled in from interns and directors. And one retired designer who said she wished she had this at 25. Every now and then, a stray comment flares up online, a stranger reaching for spice. I let Armand handle the ones that matter and let the rest evaporate. My energy is worth more than a reaction. On our porch, a chalkboard holds Daisy's wobbly letters spelling pancakes with a heart that looks like a potato. It stays there under a coat of clear spray, so rain can't push it away beneath it. I keep a tub of colored chalk and a box of sprinkles, because some rituals deserve to be ready. People ask if I regret marrying into a family that tried to curate me. The answer is not elegant. I regret letting myself work so hard to belong that I missed the shape of the room. I do not regret the work it took to get us out. The friendships that held the parts of Marcus that woke up and walked with me the way my life feels now, like a house with open windows. I have learned that safety isn't silence, and loyalty isn't obedience. I have learned that the story anyone writes about you is only powerful if you hand them your pen. The night before I turned 34, I stood in our kitchen with lights low. The smart system finally. Boring and honest. Naomi and Ben at the table arguing about dumpling folds. Marcus washing bowls. Daisy asleep on the couch under a gold blanket and a layer of sprinkles, because she insisted on holding the jar. I looked out at a block that smelled like cedar and rain, and not once like control. I thought about the first crack over stew and the folder that pretended to be my life. I thought about the painting that hid a door, and the child who caught me and saved me by asking a simple question. I thought about the way the canary ping lit up a screen and gave a timestamp to my fear. I thought about my parents' thrifted mugs and the way they always said, "Keep your name, keep your receipts. Keep your good people." Later, I posted 3 lines for the people who have followed this ride and turned a comment section into a small town that knows how to hold a stranger up. I wrote, "We're okay. The sky keeps staying blue, and the kettle still boils when you ask it to. And because this is where you get to talk back. Answer me this." So someone else reading might feel braver tomorrow. What would you refuse to let anyone edit out of your life?